Here today, hopefully with love in our hearts. And you know, we live in a pretty insane time, and as we move forward, we've got to recognize the important things in life: family, country, and loving one another. Our country's in peril, and right now I'd like to pledge allegiance to our flag. And I'd like a volunteer. I'm going to be pulling people out of the audience here almost every couple of minutes. Yes, sir. Come up here and please get us started in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please stand if you can. We've got a special gift for you today, and that's the singing of the national anthem. Rhode Island Oath Keepers, Donna's going to be doing the privilege this year. Please stand if you can and enjoy.
Oh, say, can you see
by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, moved by stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare of bursting in air gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you very much for not forcing me to sing at this audience today. Oh, you guys have no idea how lucky you are. Oh boy. You know, I am so excited. The beginning of the 4th annual Flag Day Second Amendment rally. Welcome to the show, everybody. We're here to celebrate. We are here to celebrate. We're here today with love in our hearts. I believe firmly that gun owners are among the most peaceful people in this country and on this planet. It isn't the extremists that we hear about, these gun owners that are out doing a lot of these heinous things. As we look and see who the perpetrators are, it's those that actually want to see more gun control. They think the solution to big government is more government. They take the tools that we cherish, those tools of freedom, and that's what they are. They're tools of freedom. They do nothing wrong on their own. They're a piece of metal and plastic. I've yelled at my gun, go out and do something horrible, let me see you. And it doesn't. It takes the evil in the heart of man to do that. So as we analyze who commits these heinous crimes, it's often not the extreme right that the media would like to portray. It comes many times from the other end of the political spectrum. There's bad in the world, and it's not contingent upon parties. But one thing is for sure, the only thing that will stop a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun. That's right. Yeah, gun control. Common sense gun control. Don't be lulled into that. good gun control is a tight pattern. And that's it. That's all you got to know about gun control. The paperwork you need. You were born with all the paperwork you need. We're up here today. We're going to celebrate. We're not here to rant and rave about all kinds of things that don't matter. We're not going to parrot the things that we hear in the press, because oftentimes that's sugar-coated and twisted around to say whatever it is that you want it to say. So one of the things I wanted to do is have a real accurate portrayal of what it is that we are, what we're standing for, and what we're doing. So we've got to make sure what goes out is accurate. No longer are we going to settle for half-truths, because you see, half the truth is still half a lie. So we want to make sure that the proper message goes out. Today is a celebration. We're not here as extremists. We're not here to wish ill will on anyone. We're here to assert our rights. Okay? We've got to get that mindset into our friends and neighbors and family, that rights aren't something you beg for. You don't make application for rights. They are asserted. You are born with them. They are God-given. They are not bestowments of government. So rights are to be asserted. And that includes the Second Amendment. Boy, I've got, how many people from Connecticut here today? We got a few. You remember a few years back, they were foisting some gun control down in the folks in Connecticut, and we turned on our TVs and we saw people just lining up like sheep off to slaughter to register and turn in their guns. The media portrayed it like just long lines and everyone's complying. We found out afterwards that over 80% of the people said, no way, we're not doing it. That was 20% of the sheeple that were standing in line. There's still way too many, but that's what it was. They said no. And for that, I'm glad. What I want to do, before I get ranting too much on this stuff, is I want to, for a moment, go back and we're going to refocus a little bit on the event itself. It's the Flag Day Second Amendment Rally. We do it every year, the same day, around Flag Day. And I've got a great pair to come up to give us a historical background on not only Flag Day, but Bunker Hill Day. We're going to be celebrating that today. The good sheriff, we interrupted his birthday to come out and party with us this year, so it might be a little surprise to sheriff. Right now, I'd like to introduce a couple of folks. They're not just patriots out there fighting a good fight, but they're both great friends of mine. Rich Howell, he's right here local in Western Mass. He's been out there for a long time trying to keep control local and fight the good fight. My buddy Tom Moor, I bumped into him. For those of you that ever see me on Facebook and see my profile picture, that's me standing on top of a Jeep in front of the Federal Reserve building in Boston. And I think that's where I met Tom Moore. And both of these gentlemen are my local historians and Toastmasters. Early on, Tom was always giving me lessons and coaching me on speaking in public and what I should and shouldn't do. And little did he know back then in 2007 that he was creating a monster. Here I am, loud and proud. But I'd like y'all to give a hand to Rich Howell and Tom Moore, who are going to come up and give us a little historical background on this day.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
As Dave had said, today is also Bunker Hill Day. What Tom and I would like to do is give you an overview of what the day means there, and also, being the Flag Day rally, talk a little about Flag Day as well, because they do coincide. Just a little bit of background on Bunker Hill. Everybody has heard of it. Everybody has an idea of what Bunker Hill was and when it happened. But very few people understand the meaning and the significance of what happened there. It certainly speaks to what we are doing today. You had a citizenry that was not only active in its own governance, but it was trained to arms and it was trained to faith. They knew what they were fighting for. Everybody hears about the British Army attacking the Patriots at the redoubt on Bunker Hill, but nobody knows what had happened to start that. Bunker Hill was actually an offensive operation on the part of the Continental Army. Actually, it was also Army Day on June 14th. Ironically, just before the battle, Continental Congress had formally organized the Army that had organized around Boston. So they had gotten word on for June 15th that General Gage had ordered his armies to attack the American positions. So what were they going to do? They needed to draw the British Army out. As I said, these men were trained. These militias were not put together at last minute, and they weren't amateurs. If they were over 30 years old, chances were most of them had served with the British Army and the British Navy in the colonial wars, not just in America, but beyond. Also, too, training the way they did, they had to reorganize their militias in 1774 because they had a military royal governor imposed on them who shut down their legislature illegally. Their only redress was to take their legislature and meet. They were getting their militias ready for trouble that seemed to be impending. So that's what had taken place. Everybody knows today in Massachusetts the redoubt that the fight took place is now called Breed's Hill. It wasn't actually known that at the time. They've been called different things, including part of Bunker Hill, because Breed's Hill and Bunker Hill are actually part of the same hill to a degree. So the battle wasn't really misnamed. However, the Patriots there knew so much what they were doing. You had William Prescott, Israel Putnam, living in Connecticut at that time, and Richard Gridley, who was an expert in ordnance. They had decided to fortify the lower summit in the Bunker Hill area as opposed to the larger one because they thought that was going to draw the British out more. Well, it did. Their guns could reach the British ships. They could also reach the British forces nearby. So, when the attack was launched, Prescott gave, or Putnam had given, a famous order, "Don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes." It wasn't the first time that order had been given, by the way, but these men, knowing their military history, would know exactly how to train their men and what to instruct them to do. The first two waves of grenadiers and soldiers from England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales have formed up in successive waves. They too at this point would have been battle ready, although in the beginning not as much as the Americans at Lexington and Concord, ironically enough, but certainly by then they were. First two waves were beaten back ferociously. At the third wave, Howell's officers had begged him not to make that third charge. But he did. He ordered his men to strip down so they almost were indistinguishable from their foes. They made that third charge. It was almost repulsed, except the fact the Patriots had run out of powder. The command and control wasn't quite the same on our side as it was on the other side, and it showed. But those men fought valiantly. One of them, who was responsible for the Army holding together after Lexington, was Joseph Warren. He and William Prescott were the two of the last men, Prescott being the very last to leave that redoubt. Prescott had actually parried with his saber blows from other sabers and bayonets. Being the last man to get out, they ordered an orderly retreat over Charlestown Neck, over Bunker Hill, which they were not able to keep. Unfortunately, Joseph Warren was killed in the process. Lamented not just here in Massachusetts and New England, but all over the eastern seaboard and the Friends of Liberty. So we'll remember what had happened. Yes, they lost the territory, but they had drawn the British Army out. American casualties total were a little over 420. British casualties were over 1,150. They could go no further. They told them, there's no way we can do it anymore. From that point forward, they never sallied out of Boston again. So I'm going to turn the mic over to my colleague Tom, and he's going to talk to you about a very important participant that day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Flag Day. Welcome also to Bunker Hill Day. And I'm so honored to be speaking with Rich Howell. When we talk on the phone, we usually go for an hour because I just want to learn all the incredible knowledge he has. Yes, so Bunker Hill Day. Myself, I had an ancestor and he was Scots-Irish. The Scots-Irish were lined up all the way down the mountains from New Hampshire down to Georgia. I'm going to talk about another Scots-Irishman. later. But John Stark was the heart of the New Hampshire militia. Anybody from New Hampshire here today? Okay, yes, so you know what that says on your license plate, live free or die. That is a quote of John Stark, who said, "Death is not the worst of evils. As for me, I would rather live free or die." And he meant it. John Stark was in his youth. He was captured by the Indians. His canoe mate was killed by those Indians. He was made to run the gauntlet, and the Indians liked him so much they made him a warrior chief, an honorary warrior chief. And he said that his captivity under the Indians was better than either the captivity under the British or the Americans during our Revolutionary War. Anyway, he was one of those people that was very restless in everyday life, but in the heart of battle he was very calm. He could see what needed to be done. He showed up with the New Hampshire militia, which is interesting. New Hampshire had, as it does today, about only 1/4 the population of Massachusetts. And yet the New Hampshire men on the hill that day outnumbered those in Massachusetts and Connecticut combined. There were about 1,000 of them. And New Hampshire was the only state that was not invaded by the British. They're like, no, we're not going out there. Those people are crazy. And they never went up there. Probably because there's nothing up there. I'm kidding. But anyway, he knew where they were going to sweep around. And what he did was he marched out 80 yards, which is about from here to the end of that tent. He drove a stake down in there. And he said, anybody start shooting before they pass that stake, you're going to have me to deal with. And so they were like, he didn't say don't fire to the starts of their eyes. He drove a stake down there so they could see the stake, okay. And they piled up the bodies very deeply. And had they not run out of ammunition that day, they would have carried the day. Anyway, Stark later went on. I mean, these were the fighters. He's the most underrated general of that war. Washington split after that. Washington came up after that day, swore in the troops at Cambridge, split the army, tried to take Canada, sent Stark and the boys up with Arnold to take Canada. That was unsuccessful. They were at Fort Ticonderoga. Washington was almost wiped out at Brooklyn. It was a miracle of God that he was not wiped out. And so he was kicked like a soccer ball through New Jersey, and he said, get those New Hampshire men back down there. And they joined him in Pennsylvania, and Stark said, because they had been fighting in fortifications, he said, Washington, you're not going to win this war by digging trenches. Oh, said that to George. What do you say to a guy like that? Okay, John, you lead the way. Fine, I want to be. So he was on the vanguard at Trenton, on the River Road. There was snow coming down that night. The firearms wouldn't work that well. He said, boys, you're going to fix the bayonets. They took it with bayonet. And he was on the vanguard there. Then back in New Hampshire, about a year later, he and the boys came out about 30 miles north of here at Bennington. They took out the advanced troops of Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, and then later closed the back door to the Battle of Saratoga. So Stark was a very, very effective warrior, and he could see what needed to be done. And all of us, as patriots, sometimes we're in a situation we just have to see, pray, and see what needs to be done and do it. He was that type of guy. You can learn more about him, by the way, up at Camp Constitution. Our good friend Dave Kopatz is going to be there this year. Our good friend Larry Pratt is going to be there this year. Our director is going to speak. That's campconstitution.net. We hope all of you will come up. You don't even have to pay. You can just show up and see what we're all about. It's basically just like this with more women and children. And with that, I'll give it back to Rich Howell.
No cigars.
Thank you very much, Tom. That was great. We're also going to be giving you some displays. Keith Davis and Roger Kernizecki are helping us out. That flag there was the actual flag that was flown in the vicinity, maybe not in the redoubt, but in the vicinity of Bunker Hill. That is the Continental flag, they call it. Looks very much like the British ensign. If you notice the pine tree in the corner, that goes back to the early Puritan days, the early English settlement in Massachusetts. They didn't believe in idolatry, so they would not have the St. George's Cross up there or the canton at that time. They would have the pine tree, and that's what represented New England. So that is the actual flag there. Now, we're going to get to the Flag Day portion of our discussion. Everybody is familiar with our flag, our Star-Spangled Banner. But we don't know what the origins are, many of us. Well, you go back to the American Revolution. Back at the Stamp Act Congress, when our provincials were meeting across, 9 colonies were able to make it, 3 or 4 were not. They didn't refuse, they just logistically couldn't make it with the notice called and action taken. It was represented by the 9 colonies that attended, and the stripes were vertical, red and white. Well, after a while, just previous to the first Continental Congress meeting, where 12 of the colonies met, they changed the flag around. The first one had been outlawed, but so what? The Sons of Liberty had used that flag as their banner, not just here, but all over. They had inverted the stripes. They made them horizontal, and they included all 13 colonies. So that was what we call the Sons of Liberty flag. Now, go a little bit further. At that point, we had not declared our independence. So, what they did was, because we were still technically part of the British Empire, we were fighting for the same rights that they had fought for in the English Civil War and the Glorious Revolution, which was very much in the minds of the American patriots at that point. They did keep the flag of the Union at that time, which was the the St. George's Cross and the St. Andrew's Cross of Scotland. That was the flag that was flown over the siege just around the time, right after the Battle of Bunker Hill, and until independence was declared. So that leads us up to our other flag. After independence was declared, and all bounds of allegiance with Great Britain were severed, we needed to declare a new flag. Obviously, and my friend Tom is going to give us an excellent demonstration of the other part of this later, they had included that Union, or that canton with the stars, to replace the Union Jack. That represented the stars in the constellation, it represented each one of the colonies, and that was the flag that took shape at that point, and that is the flag we use today, with the exception of adding more stars, and in one case, for a number of years, adding new stripes for the states. So with that, I'm going to bring Tom back up, and he is going to go through the rest of it.
Thank you, Rich. I think I'm getting a case of flag envy. I don't have that many flags, and I feel like I should here. Wow. So, okay, I was going to ask a question. Probably some of you heard it. So, a little bit of flag trivia. So I'm going to look at this flag, and you see the part of the flag with the stars on it, that has a special name and it has a very special meaning, which I'm afraid has been lost in the years. Does anybody, not anybody that's an instructor at Camp Constitution, please, can anybody tell us what that part of the flag is called? The part of the flag with the stars. Okay. That is called the Union. It has a very special meaning, and to the early colonists and later on, it had a special meaning in their heart, probably the same way we hold liberty. And so I would say, if liberty is the spirit of America, the Union is the body and soul. It is where liberty in particular, our American liberty, must live if it is to live at all. We are, as American patriots, all like cells in that body. Probably a phrase which captures that as it exists among the people is e pluribus unum, out of many one. It is the states together, all the stars on the flag. It is the territory, the great territory. It has been my pleasure to travel the grand, majestic reaches of the Union, from sea to shining sea. Has anybody ever done that by car? Has anybody driven across America? Wow, isn't it great? And I think probably one of the amazing things is, if you're not on a timetable, it's just to find yourself in the most beautiful part of America that you never heard of. I was in northern Wyoming, not in Yellowstone Park, which is amazing, and I was just in these mountains. I think they were the Bighorns. And I was like, wow, I just got to stop here and walk around. And Stewart Roads, where's Stewart? Stewart Road. So yeah, I drove out to see Stewart. I'm going to tell you one of the properties of the Union. America divides east and west at the Mississippi. That's what we're taught, historically. The gateway to the west, Gateway Arch, is right on the Mississippi. And so you drive across the Mississippi, you think you're halfway there. You're not halfway there. There's like 2.5 times the country. And getting up to see Stewart Roads. Stewart Roads is in the very upper northwest tip of Montana. That's only halfway from here to Alaska. So if you're going to go see Stewart, which I did, then I thought, wow, I'll just go up to see Alaska. That's another country away. Has anybody driven to Alaska? I'd like to. I'm not sure my car can handle it. It's another 2,600 miles from Stewart Rhodes' house to Anchorage, Alaska. And if you put Alaska over the rest of the Union, Alaska needs the entire contiguous United States to stretch out. It would take up most of the Middle West, with the head popping up against Minnesota and Canada.
The Panhandle, where Juneau is, would extend to Charleston, South Carolina. The Aleutian Islands would cross the Rocky Mountains and all the way out to the Pacific in Northern California. That's how huge Alaska is. I hope I get there someday. That is the grand majestic reaches of the Union. It is also what we share, and you read the great Union documents that founded us are the Mayflower Compact and the City on the Hill speech, both here in Massachusetts, one in Plymouth, one in Salem, one on the decks of the Arabella, the other on the Mayflower, of course, describing who we were and how we were different from the start. We're going to have a direct relationship with God. The King has to be mentioned, but it's really a direct relationship with each other and with God. That is the foundation of our union. I thank the pastor for touching on that. And that I think we need another great awakening, and that would help America more than anything. We've had like 4 or 5 of them. I'd like to call on us to work to have another great awakening to the power, truth, and love of Jesus Christ. That's what's going to keep our union together. Yes. All right. What else here? So, this flag here, this is an interesting flag. And George Washington, when George Washington was president in the Young Republic, they added 2 more states. They added Kentucky and Vermont. And I have different states on my hat here, different pins. But then when Washington left, they kept adding, and they added 2 more stripes to it, right? So there's 15 stripes on that. The flag didn't have its name yet, but in honor of Washington, they didn't add more stripes. As states came in, we'll stick with that, and it's a pretty flag. The stars really pop out because there are fewer stars. On the Union, there is a red stripe underneath the Union, whereas on our other flags, there's a white stripe. So it has a different feeling to it. It's a very pretty flag. It really earned its stripes in the Second War of Independence. That was the flag flown on the deck of the USS Constitution as it took apart one British frigate after another. It was also the flag that flew above with General Armistead. It flew above Fort McHenry, and that's where it's got its name. Does anyone know what this particular flag is called? It is called the Star-Spangled Banner. All of our flags are referred to that, but this one in particular, that's its name, the Star-Spangled Banner. Only the one over Fort McHenry was about the size of this tent. It was huge. It was very big, and many men died raising that flag as the flagpole was shot out from under it that night, and our flag was still there. It was also the flag of General Andrew Jackson at New Orleans. And I noticed that our current president put a picture of Andrew Jackson next to his desk. Did anybody notice that? Yes. Jackson was a populist. He wasn't politically correct. The media hated him, and they lied about him. But old Andy Jackson was a man of the people. He basically helped to create what we know as the American middle class, which, and he said he saw the biggest threat to the American middle class at that time was the bank. And it was a bank owned by the Rothschilds called the Second Bank of the United States. He said, the bank is trying to kill me, but I will kill it. And the bank sent 2 assassins to kill him. Both of the firing caps went off on the old pistols, if you know the old guns, but the main charge didn't. DC gets very humid in the summer, and by miracle, neither of the pistols fired. So he was saved by that. He killed the bank. And now we have a huge debt crisis, which is not being reported. So we may yet have a huge financial crisis. Donald J. Trump went down to the Hermitage. He gave a speech at the Hermitage on the 250th anniversary of Andrew Jackson's victory and or birth. And basically him putting that picture of Andrew Jackson next to his desk is a warning to the Federal Reserve. If they try to crash this economy with all their minions, it's to say, don't think I won't do it. And with that, I'll give it back to Rick.
Thank you, Tom. So, in conclusion, as we stay up here today, this rally, our ties to the founding are very strong. They had their turn back then, when you had the majority of the Massachusetts troops and the New Hampshire men and the Connecticut men and some Rhode Islanders at Bunker Hill. We talked about the history of our flag and our fidelity to God. Remember, when they fought, they were fighting for something they knew about. It was more than themselves. And without that faith, they would never have been able to persevere. Amen. So, when we're out there, we talk about the gun rights. Keep in mind, that's how we were founded. That's how we were able to keep our liberty, and that's how we intend to keep our liberty from this point forward. So thank you very much, and we have a great program on store for you today. Dave?